Nay, Taniguchi-senpai, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about Hiroki Azuma's book, Otaku, Japan's Database Animals. But, not because I want to talk about it with you or anything.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about the otaku and what he thinks about otaku very quickly.
I think we should mention what this very outrageous overlay we have going on here, by the way, just real quick.
But it's different than normal.
Yes, you might be seeing it differently than normal. We've increased the resolution on our cameras.
Okay, this is what I really look like, though.
Yeah. So in case you're wondering, finally, the cameras are changed. You can finally see what you all really look like.
Yeah, those poor low-resolution cameras. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it makes me look like a hairy man.
Yeah, it's a crime. It's just a crime. Well, on to the main, to the book. And by the way, let's just add that little wonderful reminder again that what we're doing this week, as with every week, is we are not doing a book review. We're not gonna give you some sort of lecture on the book or something like that. If you want those things, well, read the book, and maybe you can find wonderful philosophy lectures all over the internet. What we're doing is a book discussion, not a book review.
Also, it should be mentioned, too, that this book is translated into English. It's called, the English title is Otaku, Japan's Database Animals by Hiroki Azuma. Look it up on Amazon. You can
the Japanese
get it anywhere.
book is located next to my face.
Yeah, I mean, like, another way to kind of translate the Japanese title is Animalizing Postmodernism, right?
Yeah.
Which gets more to the heart of what he's trying to get at.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, or the animalistic postmodernist.
Yeah. So he's a really interesting philosopher, Hiroki Azuma. He's not only a philosopher about otaku, but he does many things, constitutional reform. He's active in Japan. He's kind of a cultural icon in Akihabara. So definitely check him out. He's very much alive and active. I believe you can see a picture of him somewhere on one of these screens.
Yes. I wonder which one it is. I'll continue talking so the camera focuses on me just a little bit longer so you can think about it. Okay, back to you, Mari-chan.
Okay, it's definitely Kyubey in the corner here, right?
Yeah, which one was it? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Kyubey.
Well, it's the Kyubey, right? He's the one he goes to the Japanese cafes in Japan and he talks about philosophy and otaku. So, otaku, I guess, are just basically Japanese fanboys of anime or idols or computers or anything like that. Maybe they're kind of a special breed of fan.
Of course, maybe we might want to extend the same reservations that Hiroki Azuma did in the same book, where he says, listen, that when you get into the definition of otaku, you're kind of opening a can of worms. It's also become a big identity signifier. Actually, in the I don't know what he says in the English version, but in the Japanese version, he says otaku kei bunka as opposed to otaku bunka.
Yeah.
He goes out his way to explain in Japanese why he uses that K too, right? Yeah. So maybe we just think in terms of family resemblances.
Yes. Which another person whose picture is on my screen being talked about those. Those I'll also let you figure out which one that is on your own. And I'll talk a little bit longer just so the camera stays focused on me.
Okay, it was Kyubey.
Okay, it was Kyubey again. Kyubey was one of the most influential philosophers in the 20th century. So, I guess you guys didn't know that. So, all right. So, getting right into the meat of it, I guess let's just talk about otaku. And I guess maybe some people know about otaku from their experiences on the internet. I think in general, when English speakers hear otaku, they think of anime or manga. I guess something associated with Japan. In that sense, maybe video games a little bit, but most likely anime. So, I guess just to put it most bluntly, I guess he kind of thinks that otaku tend to watch or view media, or see meanings in the world in a slightly different way than previously existed up until now, right?
Yeah.
And they see media and they consume media in a completely different way.
And this is not a point he's trying to make locally, though. This is going to be a much larger point about the state of society in general, and not just otaku. Otaku are going to turn out to be an example of our current world.
Yeah. There's just going to be one good way to explain things that could be spread out to something like Batman.
Yes. There we go. So let's I guess so. This is really difficult to explain what he's getting at. So let's just take it to a place everyone probably who is going to ever watch this is more familiar with. Somebody like Batman.
I'm familiar with Batman.
Yes. From your multiple Batman references, but I guess how would you go about it? I would just ask you long and short of it, like, what is the meat of Batman?
Yeah.
I mean, like, where is the core of Batman?
Is
it? Yeah.
It's on his sculpted rubber nipples.
Okay. you consider the bat nipples to be the core of the Batman character.
Yes.
You know what? In a crazy way, I hate to say this, but in a crazy way, the essence of Batman might be the uniform. Right? I mean, it's the one thing that seems to stay the same, or at least not totally the same, but generally the same, because Batman has changed to so many different Batmans over the years. What did stay the same that allowed him to be Batman?
Yeah, I mean, crime fighting.
Well, his origin story.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's real loose. It's real loose.
In a weird way, though, it's definitely not his personality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he changes. The '60s Batman on TV, anyway, and the Nolan Batman are very different personality-wise.
Yeah, and even the Batman versus Superman Batman, I mean, he's kind of a psychopath killer. So I mean, like, there's very different Batmans out there, but we all recognize them as Batman, I think. Also, the multiple redoings of the DC universe and the multiple Batmans in the comics, right? Or the Batman the Animated Series Batman. They're all different Batmans, but they're all recognized as Batman, right?
So I guess that leaves you asking the question, well, where is the core of Batman? And it doesn't appear to be in, like, some sort of Batman story. You know, like, that glorious story of Batman's takedown of the Joker doesn't really capture everything.
Yeah. The meaning of Batman, if you ask the meaning of Batman, what does Batman mean? I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that question, right? The story of Batman, what does it mean? Because there's so many different Batman stories that doesn't seem like that's asking the right question anymore. So maybe for the first thing I guess he would say is, I don't know, maybe I would say too, is that what otaku do is they tend to shift from, because it's not weird to say, they tend to shift from story to character, right? The emphasis that the way otaku consume media now anyway is they stop focusing on the story so much as they started focusing on the character itself.
Yeah.
To the point where they're able to cut that character out with a little scissors, pick him up, and move him to some other story, or not even just the character, parts of that character, right? They can, like the little twin tails or the haircut or the uniform, right? They can cut apart characters and start moving them around in the same way that, I don't know how we've done it, but we've cut Batman out of his universe, the 60s Batman or whatever Batman, the comic book Batman, and we've pasted him all over to these other universes.
So, yeah, I mean, and this is, I guess, if you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, okay, I guess that's the deal. That's what he's trying to point out, is that this is the shift he's talking about. That maybe you're already so swimming in it, you haven't noticed it yourself. Right? That maybe this phenomenon has already encompassed you, and you don't find anything weird about it at all. You don't find anything weird about the fact that, you know, there's this guy named Batman who, you know, could be represented in multiple different ways, in multiple different situations. You'd still call it Batman. And does one of them gain, like, superiority over the other Batmans? Like, does Nolan's Batman become the authoritative Batman? I mean, could you really say that? Like, that we can't disobey Nolan's Batman? I don't think. I think it'd be really weird to say.
Yeah, I mean, what is the Batman anymore? I mean, like, maybe a purist would have to say something like, well, the creator, the original Batman is the only pure Batman, and everything is just this derivative work of Batman. But it doesn't seem like fans of Batman enjoy Batman that way, right? They don't think that the original comic book Batman in episode 1 or in issue 1 is the only possible Batman. That's not the only Batman they enjoy, obviously, right? Because just think of the big success of the Nolan Batman. So they're obviously able to rearrange and take Batman right out of that world and throw him into this dark, gritty kind of world with the Joker, and or throw him into Batman v Superman, unfortunately, and have him gun people down. Okay, I wish this character could roll her eyes, but I can't do it now. But my eyes would be rolling. But apparently Batman now shoots people. But, so even that part of Batman wasn't spared. Like his one rule. Like, remember the Joker said, you have to break your one rule. Which rule is that? Okay, so like Batman had one rule: don't kill. But like, yeah, he's totally down with killing now. Apparently, right? He's a psycho that shoots people. So I don't know what has remained of Batman besides the origin story and the costume. I'm not quite sure anymore. So that ability to do that, I mean, like, superheroes in general are all that, right? Iron Man and all these, like, Iron Man story is able to be changed and rearranged, and people don't seem to care.
Yeah. So I guess if you can grasp this sensibility, if you can imagine this and kind of roll with this, then you are in the postmodern attitude, according to Mr. Azuma here. You've accepted stories without an overarching, or media art without an overarching narrative, that somehow Batman is the core and he can travel from work to work to work like Sam Beckett at Quantum Leap or something.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where, like, I don't know. In other words, like, being able to separate Batman from his story, his original story, kind of just means that, I don't know, that the story itself seems to take less essence, right? The world itself doesn't seem as important anymore. What people want to see is Batman, the character. They want to see the character Batman, and whether he be in any different kind of work or not.
So basically, to kind of summarize, rather than consuming a story, consuming the story of Batman, you're consuming Batman, the character.
Yeah. Yes. So I hope that makes sense to people. It should, because that's how we live today. I think that's what the world is like, especially in the age of superheroes now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It seems like, so in other words, the logical next step from that is, okay, so there's many possible Batmans, right? Yeah. And none of them seem to have legitimacy to be the ultimate Batman, right? No one can say, well, this is the only real Batman, and everything else is just crap garbage Batman, right? Like, nothing ever reaches issue 1 of the comic book of Batman, right? That's not how we consume Batman. So the derivative works of Batman are on the same level as the original work, right? What's the original work anymore? It's just lined up with the other derivative works, right? Yeah. Each of them seem to have the same value, right? Yeah, none of them supersede the other, right? They're on a flat plane, as opposed to the Nolan Batman. Like, I don't know if it would be weird to hear a critic say, "Well, Nolan tried really hard, but he just couldn't capture the essence of the true Batman," right? I mean, I don't know if anyone said that. I mean, Otaku or fans of Batman do say this isn't really what Batman would do, but I mean, to this point, there are so many different kinds of Batmans. I don't know if there's going to ever be any kind of agreement about the only kind of Batman available. So,
well, though there is the question, then there is, of course, limits to the idea of Batman. That's what makes him Batman.
Yeah.
And
obviously, belts and buckles you need for Batman. Oh wait, no.
I mean, this kind of, it's gonna have to some kind of weird family resemblance concept might have to be pulled in. Like you need to keep enough of the Batman, but there's no like one element that you couldn't change. It just you can pull a couple, but you got to leave a couple in place.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you pull out and what you keep, as long as it keeps kind of a family resemblance to the Batman.
Yeah, I mean,
but nothing
just think
is core.
Yeah, the Batman in the Lego movie, right? I mean, there's just another different Batman that you kind of accept as Batman. So,
yeah.
So, like, I think that another way to look at this is another modern phenomenon. And I really do think this is how we live in the world today. Is okay, I'll start going into weirder things like I think, for instance, some of the modern fan bases, the extreme fans of, I'll just say it, like Steven Universe and My Little Pony and all these kind of pseudo, kind of like almost shadows of otaku, right? But
Yeah.
it seems like when I see these people, the derivative works they create, the fan works they create, it seems like those are just as important as the main work, sometimes more important than the main work, it seems like, right? The fan-created works of My Little Pony or Steven Universe or name your favorite fandom these days, sometimes they achieve a status that is on par with quote-unquote canon things, right? I mean, there's a new Star Trek movie coming out by fans, right? That was so good that the studios tried to pull it down from it. I mean, like, among the fan base, that the stuff achieves kind of, how can you, canon level acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fan base is able to create canon just using the settings and the database that whatever they use to generate Star Trek or My Little Pony or Steven Universe or pick your favorites fandom these days.
I mean, I guess the thing is, like, even if it doesn't become exactly canon, it's just interesting the fact that this could even be threatening. I mean, the idea that, for example, it's not the idea that the Starship Enterprise has a story that you need to follow from episode 1 to the end, and that's what Star Trek was really. I mean, Star Trek's kind of in a gray area, but that's what it was really about. And that, like, if you were to create a side story, how could you even consider that Star Trek? I mean, it doesn't even have the episode where Kirk talked to the Klingons. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's already outside of locating the core of it in the story a little bit.
Yeah. So, I think that's another phenomenon that, if you think about it, you should be well aware of, right? If you're into any one of these communities, I don't know if you are, but if you are, you can see the kind of the three-ring circus that surrounds these communities is just as powerful as the main work itself, especially these days. Surprisingly so.
Yeah. Can we let's just jump into some crazy stuff here?
Yeah.
Then this supposed change from, like, this modern style of reading where you read through the episodes to this grand narrative that's the true core of the story, to this new one where it's more character-based reading. What do you think? Like, I was thinking about just what I like or what makes a good character, and do you think in a way that having a character who can travel outside of their universe is more fleshed out than a character who would, like, literally explode if they left their universe?
Yeah, I actually had the same feeling, right?
I mean, like, it feels like, don't you feel like it gives that character a little bit of edge of reality? Like, they don't quite fit in this universe.
They kind of transcend it.
Yeah, like, neither do you. You don't fit in your universe either, do you? I mean, you have all these little elements and patchwork together from your childhood and your history and stuff, and you could be pulled out of your environment and you'd still survive. You'd make it somehow. It just feels like I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to knock this change and say somehow like, well, story's dead. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can perceive what's happening here, but after thinking about it for a while, I mean, I do think it could be emblematic of a character, a well done character that they could somehow leave their universe. You could imagine them somewhere else, don't you?
Mm. Mm. And the fact that he talks about the bad simulations, the bad derivative works that people just throw away. This is not Batman.
Yeah.
But the fact that Batman or any of these characters, well, maybe in this case perhaps Batman's not the best example, but if we were taking like let's go to Evangelion and Rei Ayanami, the restrictions on Rei Ayanami are a little bit tighter than the restrictions on Batman, which is why I'm choosing her. But that the fact that we can have all these derivative works without people just throwing them out and saying, this is not actually Rei Ayanami, just shows how fleshed out she had to be, that you could imagine her in all these various situations and tell the derivative works where she's not acting in accordance with how she should act in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is where it's going to get into a really, really tough category because, I don't know, for example, people like Gaijin Goomba are going to start to freak out here, right? I guess you could call them ideologues, I guess you could say, right, in a certain sense.
In the book, that's where they would end up, wouldn't it? In this book, anyway.
Gaijin Goomba and people like him. I've heard this all the time, though. Like I often heard like one complaint that people would say against people that watch anime or anime itself or whatever it may be, Steven Universe or whatever, My Little Pony or something, is they'd often say like, well, yeah, it's fine for those people that like it, but why do they have to have everything? And you like, what do you mean when they say, why do they have to have everything? What are you talking about? What they're talking about is the fans of the community start taking and making like other shows and they draw them as anime characters, right? Or they draw them as My Little Pony characters, or they draw them as Steven Universe characters. And these people are insulted by that, as if, like, by doing that, they're taking those worlds from them, right? Like, they're doing something to the base work itself, right? Kind of deriding it or not living up to its level. But I think that the way the otaku consume media is it's just one more iteration of a way things can change, right? It does nothing to the original work or the original character, like whatever Gaiji Goomba was complaining about. He was complaining about
Yoko from Gurren Lagann.
Yoko from Gurren Lagann, and how her character changed a little bit in the manga version as opposed to the anime version, and this like disgusted him and he hated it, right? But I think like the way otaku consume media is they don't care. They don't care about that because that's just another kind of Yoko, right, in general. Or that's the way that, for example, that's why in Japan they have this huge culture of kind of erotic comics, I guess, or doujinshi, right? I mean, like they'll just take their characters and then throw them into totally implausible situations, right? And to them, that's just one more version of it that neither destroys the original work or says anything bad about it. That's just one more iteration, one more combining, one more remix of a possible millions of different kinds of remixing of a work. And that's it. It doesn't do anything to harm the original work in any way.
Yeah, it's interesting the way he mixes all this, tries to explain this kind of like postmodern lingo, and one of the little bits he brings up to help him is the word simulacra, right? And he says like, in a way, he thinks like otaku view the original work as a kind of simulacra, as in like, it's just in a sense that the original work, even the original work itself, it was composed of all these elements. Like so there's these base elements. Like you got your characters or whatever, you got your tsundere or you got your blue-haired girl, right? the setting, right? You got your base elements, and what, for example, Evangelion would be one particular arrangement of those base elements. It could have easily been a different arrangement, but this is the one we got, right? This is the one that was put on TV. That's the Evangelion we saw, but we can retool that, right?
Yeah.
We can change up those elements and
We can
make
tweak the
something.
dials, right?
Yeah, and then you'd get an Evangelion where Rei has toast in her mouth and Shinji hits her on the way to school, right? If we just tweak the dials enough.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is just to say that this is how otaku are consuming the media, right? And what's interesting is like for the popularity of Evangelion, right? Especially in Japan. I mean, like, I really doubt a lot of people really knew the story. This is where one of the big changes happened. I mean, listen, you should really take a look at what the story of Eva is. It's crazy, man. Like, what's really, really going on? But that's not really where the focus went to. A lot of the people ended up just focusing completely on the characters. And maybe Hideaki Anno wanted to focus on more the relationships of the characters. That was what was important for him. But people just focused on Rei or Asuka, and that's it. And this, I think, disturbed him to a little bit of a degree too, which is why he lost it a little bit there. But this is just how, or at least how otaku or fans seem to consume media these days. As different elements that can be remixed and rearranged according to their own desires, right? If they don't like Shinji as a wimpy, 13-year-old loser, okay, don't worry. I'm going to write my fanfic where Shinji's this go-get-em Gurren Lagann Superman that's going to go smash the angels tomorrow, right? And okay, I'm going to write my doujinshi up, my little comic up, and sell it at the next thing, and everyone's going to love it, right? It's just kind of these alternate worlds that people dream up, and they're mixed and rearranged in all these different ways. And I could see from if you were the very ideological creator, this might really disturb you. You're kind of like, but that's not the story I was trying to tell. What are you doing to my story? Don't you care about my story? Right? I was telling the story of Shinji, the wimpy kid who has to learn to grow up. You're telling a completely different story. How is this Eva? But that's not how they are seeing Evangelion. It's a remixable, completely changeable, different way of consuming mass media.
I guess to come at it from a different angle, I have a lot of friends who I talk to about movies and art and things like this, and an opinion I get a lot from them is kind of, because I like to cook up weird theories about movies and stuff and talk with them about this, but what I get back a lot is this kind of, who are you to say my reading is wrong? Here I am, I was watching Jurassic Park I was watching Jurassic Park just to eat, for the thrills,
dinosaurs,
to eat some popcorn, to see some dinosaurs. And that's it. That's how I enjoy Jurassic Park. Are you telling me that that's the wrong way to look at Jurassic Park? Are you telling me I need to look for some kind of higher narrative or something about Dr. Grant's overcoming his fear of having kids or something? Do I need to do that, or can't I just love it for the dinosaurs? In a way, I think people like this kind of come in to this picture as well. They kind of want to say, me, the viewer, I get a say as to what constitutes this work.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a part of this. And if I partake in the work as just dinosaurs, oh no, right? That's just as much a legitimate way to watch Jurassic Park than you trying to read something into Dr. Grant throwing a raptor claw down from the tree. When the brontosauruses were there, it's just as good. And it's interesting, and sometimes, and I don't tell these people no, you are illegitimately watching Jurassic Park. I never do that, of course. But I mean, sometimes people do this just to shut down conversation. But I get it. Why can't you just enjoy Jurassic Park just for the dinosaurs? I'm not going to tell you can't do that either. But it just seems like when you do that, then it seems like what you pull, so you can pull different things from the work. I can sit there looking at the raptor claw, and thinking about that, or you can just pull the dinosaurs out. And if we're going to put those as both legitimate readings of Jurassic Park, going on another one of my movies there, but then you're also in this way of looking at media too. You've already succumbed to this. You're already a part of this a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone, maybe some do, but I don't know if anyone seriously says that there's only one correct way to interpret a work these days. Like, that's it. The author has complete say on everything, and that's the end of the story, right? End of the story. I mean, like, I think there are better and worse ways to read a work, but there's never going to be an interpretation of a work that includes every aspect of it. That's just simply impossible. So, I mean, I think we all accept that that's what makes works interesting too, right?
Yeah.
The fact that they do have that ambiguity, right? That they are open to a kind of interpretation, and when you relook at them back again in a couple of years, you see something different in them that you didn't see before. I thank God that there's a kind of ambiguity in the text, and yet there's a depth to it too. So yeah, I think we're already there. It's just that some people are just such ideologues that they don't want to accept that.
Yeah, I mean, we will get into this later, but yeah, I'm really on your page about like somehow saying that like therefore any reading is legitimate. I think you're right. I agree with you. There are better and worse readings too, but we can still be in this realm where accepting some things are more or better readings of works, but still also take into account of the fact that now the way you actively engage with the work is going to also affect what kind of message you're able to draw out of that work too.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, just as a kind of a thought on the side is, I mean, isn't mass media more like what these people say it is? The people you were just talking about, these people that are like, well, I have my way of seeing it. It seems like that mass media itself, it does kind of suffer from a, how can I say this nicely, a kind of multiple personality disorder, if you were, right? Like each movie has elements that weren't completely in control by one guy, right? I mean, there's the director and his vision, but there's the sound guys and the light guys and the CG guys, and you know, things get screwed up along the way, and they do things that they want to do, and they add little secrets in that the director didn't know about. Okay, so in a weird way, it's like each piece of modern media is just like this mass production of like a million different guys here. And yeah, if you want to read it as something else, I mean, it seems almost more appropriate to do that because it's not one guy's vision alone, right? There are other things that seep into the work that let you read it in certain different ways. So, I mean, just as a way to prop them up, I could say, like, look, I mean, modern media is kind of has multiple personality disorder in a certain way, certain aspects of it do.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. I do agree. I agree on that. Like the fact that like it's a collaborative process. Like especially movies are a collaborative process. It gets under my skin a little bit when somebody will do this whole like, well, you know, any reading is legitimate. But then it gets into this kind of weird, like, remember what you mentioned, you brought up before, that this dissociative disorder.
Yeah.
Like, where, I like the way Azuma puts it. He says, like, as though, like, you are sitting within one branch, but outside of all of them. And that, like, maybe you'll watch the movie and you'll, like, really be moved and moved to tears or something. And then when you get done, you'll be like, well, but, you know, that way of viewing it is totally meaningless, you know. You could view it the total opposite way too. But it totally moved me, man. And you're kind of like, okay. But they're able to pull this trick off. People are able to pull this trick off, I think. I mean, I don't think they do. They do kind of at least explicitly believe these things together.
Yeah, I mean, like if we want to just get into, for example, like so, what happens is, I mean, you can see it happen in our modern world right now. So everyone feels like they have the right to change the original work as they want to see it. And where do we see this the biggest? Star Wars. Everyone's like, George Lucas, screw you. it's our work too. How dare you? Like, this is our culture. This is our, I don't know, universe. This is our extended universe. You killed it. You're raping our childhood. Blah blah blah. That reaction, that idea that like, no, George Lucas, that's ours. That ain't yours anymore. You're just another cog in the big machine of Star Wars. And you don't have no final say on the meaning of Star Wars any more than anyone else does anymore. We have it too. It's ours too, right? So, I mean, this is the modern world, I think, anyway. So, but when you start letting the audience be able to pick and choose, right? In other words, what the otaku or fans are able to do is they start picking, choosing the elements of the thing that they like, and they start reading those only. Okay, yeah, it starts to sound really, really, I don't know, like a big giant ego trip, right? Like you just start reading the things you want to hear. Like, oh, well, what did I see in this movie? Well, everything I wanted to see, right? It sounds just totally subjective, and there's nothing else to it. And look, I guess, and maybe you can see on the pictures on Jesse's screen over there, like you can kind of see a little graph in the corner there about.
Yes. I'll chat a little bit so you can just look at it for a second.
Yeah.
And, yay! This is.
Dustin, if you click over there, you can control the camera. By the way.
Yeah, I am controlling the camera. I got it on Jesse right now.
Whoops. Okay, so I was running my mouth for nothing. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Run your mouth, please. But you can see that it's fine. But you can see it. There's two graphs on there. In the lower graph, you can see is the way that people consume media now. They are reading up from the database of, I don't know, combined objects like in Star Wars, and then there's the smaller stories within the Star Wars universe, and then people pick and choose those stories, and they read up from those the meanings that they want to get. And yeah, done the wrong way, I think that's a very dangerous move, right? I think dangerous in a lot of ways, right? It puts you in a bubble, and also actually starts taking anything out of the work, right? It's the poorest thing imaginable. It's basically just mental masturbation, to put it really crudely.
It does remind you of the people who watch YouTube to give themselves ego boosts.
Yeah.
Like to hear their opinions reinforced constantly, and if you're not going to do that, well, see ya.
Yeah, right. This is where you have to accept a really kind of difficult position that we're in. Like, philosophically, I can't accept that there's only one, like the meaning that, as Wittgenstein would say, like there's no meaning that comes from outside of the universe. All meaning has to come from within the universe, and there's no one
Wittgenstein. Anyway.
Later Wittgenstein, and there's no one reading of a work. So I guess the question has to be, so when you start reading up works, by reading up I mean like accepting that the work doesn't have control over you as to what interpretation is, that there are multiple interpretations possible, and I could even say, in a weird way, legitimate, I guess, right? If you're watching Jurassic Park just to have a good time, okay, that's legitimate. I think that's a legitimate way to read Jurassic Park. But maybe you can think of good and better ways for you to interact with art, like for your own sake, for your own psyche. So like, why would you read up from a work? There's only basically three options, right? To fulfill your desires in fantasy, which is basically just self-satisfaction. Yeah. Which I think that Hiroki Azuma is very worried that the otaku are doing. Yeah. And this is what makes them animals. They don't engage with the work. They're engaging with their own fantasies. They just get out of the work what they want to get, and that's it. Never having to fight against someone else. But there's three ways you could do it. Getting your own desires and fantasies out. You could also read your own ideology into it. I think we've met a few people on the YouTubes that do that. Yeah. That you read up your own ideology, like, oh, what is Steven Universe? Well, that's just another commentary on, gender politics. Well, okay, sure. I don't know if the creators think so, but hey, then again, the creators don't have the final say, so whatever. But sure, why not? And then I think the third option you have is encountering another perspective.
Yeah,
right?
Kind of opening yourself up to the work.
Oh yeah, opening yourself up to a work, and thus opening yourself up to change and growth. Right? You can take any one of those options. I would suggest you open yourself up to the work.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling down, hey, I'm not going to be like, hey, don't watch I mean, if you're sitting there watching Jurassic Park and you're tired, I'm like, you notice all the anti-capitalist messages that's going on in here or something, right? Like, man, whew, yeah, right. I mean, like, I'm not going to start harassing you about that if you just want to see the raptors. Oh, did you see how Grant tied his seatbelt there? That's foreshadowing in the movie later, right? Ooh, right. Like, like you could do all this, the ideological stuff or this foreshadowing, or you could just enjoy it on that level. But I think it makes you richer. But if I'm going to take it back to another egotistical thing, it makes you richer to open yourself up to the world as opposed to consuming yourself in a bubble. But I think Azuma, and I think rightly so, maybe has a fear that the otaku are not doing that. Some otaku, anyway, are not doing that, and they're just simply, boy, to put it crudely again, I'm sorry to put it so crudely, but this fits in so well with the otaku. It's just kind of, I don't know, mental masturbation. They find a set of traits that they like, and they search for that, and then they just enjoy that, and it's done.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think you're wrong to use the crude imagery, considering Azuma devotes a section to that.
Yes.
I guess the thing is, like, it's interesting. I mean, this part about the animalization, like, it intrigues me, and I agree with you, Dustin, on the fact that, like, you're left open. I guess the deal is, like, now this quote-unquote grand narrative, this one reading that you're supposed to take is gone. Right? So then we're left with, how much are you willing to put in to the work to get something out? And I guess, so, I think the large majority of people are probably just don't want to, or not up to it, don't care enough to read up into some higher level story elements. Right, I mean, but that's not like something that's otaku only. You know what I mean? Like, just go to the movie theater. You know what I mean? Like, literally, like every single movie, every single movie, you could say the same thing about. I guess I don't want to get too. I can see why Azuma is concerned, but I don't feel as if he does indeed feel pessimistic. If he feels pessimistic enough to say there's animalization going on, which I think is a legitimate concern, I'm just maybe not as pessimistic in the sense that, I mean, yeah, tons of people go to see Transformers, and I don't think there's much there, really, but I'm not too worried about movie fans either, I think, your large majorities are going to be kind of, iffy. They're going to go toward the easy to understand. They're gonna go for the the quick fix, but it just seems to me like the name of the game,
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, isn't one of his other concerns, or at least how about this as a concern, would be, look, okay, so yeah, I'm with you there that it's in the past has always been this way, but I think his two concerns are in the past, maybe he would say there was a societal grand narrative, a kind of a necessity to read things up to a higher plane, but he seems to suggest that otaku don't care about that. It's not that they don't do it; they don't care.
Yeah,
right?
He does suggest that.
Not only do they not try to search for a deeper meaning of the universe, they don't care that there is one. And I guess my challenge back to you would be, there's not. There's not a deeper meaning to the universe because the universe doesn't have a meaning written inside of it. So in a sense, they're right, right? But there's, I guess, the thing that maybe his concern would be, well, there is nothing to replace that anymore. Like, once that narrative is gone, like, for example, the narrative of Japan, this is the way Japan should be, and this is the way it's always been, or this is what a true American is, or this is what a good white guy is, or European is. Once that's smashed, what's left?
I mean, I guess the thing is, like, I kind of, yeah, I agree. There's nothing to take over for that, but, like, I think those people were asking the wrong questions right from the beginning, too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
that shouldn't come back. It shouldn't come back.
Yeah, right. I mean,
it's gone for a good reason.
Yeah, I mean, wanting that, wanting something to replace that would be a problem as far as I'm concerned. Like some kind of weird, Nietzsche might say, like a shadow of God. Like you're still in your brain somewhere. You want somebody to, God died, but you want somebody to, be step God for a while.
Yeah.
So I mean, okay, yeah, on that level, sure, fine. I mean, you're right. There's nothing like that to replace what's lost.
Yeah, but people crave identity.
Yeah. I mean that is a legitimate concern. I mean, it's interesting to think about things like, if you take it outside of this and like think about like he kind of mentions this a little bit, like how when there was a grand narrative, I mean, it steered you, coerced you, whatever, brainwashed you, however you want to put it. Like it steered you in one direction, but in virtue of that, like it also inoculated you against other stuff, right? So, but as soon as that's gone, right, then you are open. If you're not careful, you're open to trip up on a lot of stuff you wouldn't have tripped up on because the grand narrative would have just kind of kept it out. It wouldn't even let it in the door. I just love, like, as I was reading, I was going through the end of Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus, because it kind of reminded me of this a little bit in a weird way. So I just, like, at the very end of The Myth of Sisyphus, I just pulled like just two mini quotes. He said, I conclude that all is well, says Oedipus, and that remark is sacred. It teaches that all is not, has not been exhausted. It drives out of this world a God who came into it with dissatisfaction and a preference for futile sufferings. It makes of fate a human matter, which must be settled among men. And in a way, like, this is what the death of the grand narrative does to us, too. It makes what we receive from a work partially our own responsibility. I just like at the end, close to that, he also says, Camus says, in the universe suddenly restored to its silence, the myriad wandering little voices of the earth rise up, unconscious secret calls, invitations from all the faces. They are the necessary reverse and the price of victory. I think it's easy to read that back into what happened here, though. I mean, like, all these little voices start rising up. Like, oh, busty girls, hooray! New cult theology, hooray! Spiritualism, hooray! Right? All these little voices start popping up again. But I don't know. I want to be positive, like he is here. I think it's the price of victory. It's the loss of something we maybe didn't want either.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And I certainly think the responsibility has shifted intensely towards us. I mean, it's our responsibility to read a work in the best, or maybe not in a good or bad way anymore, but in a deep and in a shallow way. Is a way to start reading works, because maybe now that the option is open that you can just engage in your bubble forever, you can just sit in your whatever bubble forever. That might be the most dangerous thing in the world for you. I mean, like, if you can sit in a bubble, progress is dead. You will never progress as a human being. So the ability, the necessity to open yourself up to the world again, and yet still know that no one has the final say on what the right answer is, but you yourself don't either. That's going to be a really, really hard trek, I think.
True. I mean, just look. I mean, just again, if we're talking about like large trends and like on or how things are generally consumed, I think you're just going to see that. I really think you are. You're going to see people getting caught up and trapped up in these little bubbles, or apparently obsessed with them. Like, whereas like every single work appears to have these same points again and again because they're the easy ones to get. But still that still doesn't cause me to give up hope. I do think people are reading up more than zero. I do think people are reading up higher than that.
I mean, like, I guess it's going to have to be a debate that goes on within these communities, which is, like, I guess the ultimate critique of, I don't know, I want to keep on saying fanboys, but I guess I'll just use the word for lack of a better one. But the ultimate critique of a fanboy is like, he's not the fanboy. Ultimately, is not using the work as a grounding to reality. The fanboy is using the work as a grounding for his own identity.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
That's how he's reading up the work. That's how he's playing and engaging with it. And it's a, I don't know, to use this metaphor again, I'm sorry, circle jerk. It's a giant circle jerk for whatever, their identity, and it becomes kind of a dangerous, kind of vicious circle where, I don't know, it starts to become toxic, like, I hate to say it, but like the Steven Universe world or My Little Pony or elements of them anyway. And I guess it shows real, I don't know, strength of character, I think, to be able to enjoy a work that has such toxic fans, right? And still not be part of them, right? Like,
yeah. I mean,
right?
it's the fans too. I mean, it's not the work itself.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the way the fans are doing it. Like it really does remind me of Mad Max, right? In a certain way, the world we live in, right? This post-apocalyptic, godless world, and we've kind of hobbled together like everything we've ever seen. Like, for example, me, I'd be riding around with a gremlin strapped to my back and a Ghostbuster proton pack and a computer and like everything that I consider me, and I just strap it on and ride off into the desert. That's kind of how people live now too. They just strap on all their whatever their fandom is, and they ride off into the internet, and that's the symbol of their identity now. And I think that's just going to keep on getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
I know on our channel we have yet to make a game sack reference, right? Can I be the first to make a game sack reference?
Make a game sack reference.
So just on a weird little side note to that, like I thought it was kind of interesting to think about. As I was reading this book, that game sack, I watched a game sack video called like Let's Make a YouTube Show, and like one of the first things he did was he brought him out and he said, all right, first for your channel you're gonna have to stand in front of a bookcase full of games, and that gives you your gamer cred. It almost looked to me like the database, in other words, like the background of your video is your database, you know what I mean, like, and that's how people are looking at it, like the greater the database the more your cred, right?
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
It even kind of looked like a little database with all different colors, but anyway. No, I think it's going to keep getting like this, too.
Yeah. I wish I had the data, though. If anyone has data on this, like the growth of fandom, I mean, it's something that just, I guess, I anecdotally feel like that fandoms are getting stronger and bigger all the time as how can a traditional collective movements die. For example, the neighborhood, the community, religion, everything that used to bind people together, as that falls away, is stripped away, these other things are getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I mean, again, just anecdotally, that does feel like what's happening to me too. Again, I would like to see numbers on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, we have the numbers that our communities are falling apart.
Yeah.
Bowling Alone, if you just look at the book Bowling Alone, we have the numbers. The numbers are that American communities, at least, are totally falling apart. But what would be interesting is, what are the alternative communities that are being constructed? What are the numbers on those? The strength, the money being used in those? Like, I suppose I could look those up. It would take quite a while, and I don't know what metric I'd use to measure it against, but I think it'd be an interesting study. So I think that's kind of the world we find ourselves in, at any rate. One that's kind of replaced old communities with fandoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Potentially very dangerous and toxic fandoms.
Yes. Hopefully they don't go to that level, but they do. People do this. They just rush to the work to fill a little gaping hole in their heart. They really do. So.
Yeah. And I really feel like that they don't go to the work to find something else about themselves, or to find something they don't like about themselves, or to find something new in the world. Like, the people that end up sticking around for the longest time are the ones that need comfort. that can't make it in the world, that need a friend, right? Not all the time, but a portion of them, let's just say. The worst of the worst, as it were.
I take offense to that.
Hey, we've all been there. We've all been there. I've been there too. Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, that seems to be kind of, at least where I want to take the book.
Yeah.
For the most part, there's a lot more than that in here. By the way, there's so much more than that in here. But maybe it's best to kind of leave it as that. That's how he. There's much more intricate detailing of laying this out, but that's how he seems to read otaku and the new wave in the world. And I think he's on target. He's not wrong at all. And I quite enjoyed this book. I really found it enjoyable.
I do like the concept of the database. I think it's a useful, like, compared to some other postmodern theory where there literally isn't even a database.
Yeah.
Like, there's the idea that, like, somehow that there's just surface without the
Simulacra.
database. Yeah, it's all simulacra with there's no database to pull. But, like, with the introduction of his thought about, like, there's still a dual layer. It's just that there's a database lying under the stories. Kind of a meaningless database, though. A non-narrative database. I think that it makes things click a little bit better. I like that thought.
Anything else you guys want to add?
I was thinking maybe if there was a god, wouldn't he just be a database animal?
Yeah.
Just rearranging different people into different situations.
Like, I mean, like, he's just like making crap out of dirt. You know what I mean? Like, why does he have to make it this way? Yeah. Why does he have to make it this way? He doesn't. He's God. You know, he could have made, duck-billed platypus people. And he's like, I'm kind of getting off on this one. This one's awesome. The people.
The people.
People.
I know there's one thing that I thought was other interesting that we didn't even touch on at all, but I thought was interesting, and I want to hear both your guys' thoughts on this. Is the section called "The Conservative Sexuality of the Otaku"?
Ooh.
I like that section.
What a provocative section that is! Like, because I don't know, I always found the way to read Japan poorly. This is the way to read Japan poorly. Japan is a nation of perverts that are sexually freaky, and they're getting down all the time. This is a poor reading of Japan. Well, they might be perverts, but I don't know. But Japan ain't getting freaky at all. Japan is very sexually conservative, I think. At least, I mean, maybe. Well, let's just put it this way: it's conservative, sexually conservative. The data is in Japan has less sex than most all first world nations. So, and public displays of affection are very frowned upon. I'm sure we all know that. So, as a nation, they're very publicly, they're very conservative. Now, in assigned corners, right? Like, for example, in the comic market or in certain establishments, right? Those places, anything goes, right? But that it doesn't leave there. Okay, so this is a poor reading of Japan. Just like when people see, I don't know, tentacle porn, and they're like, "Oh, Japan, pervs, they're all pervs," right? Nah, I don't know. It doesn't seem to mix with my experience of Japan, and it's been a long one. It just seems like they're more willing to let whatever happen in established zones. But I love what he says here about the conservative sexuality of the otaku. It's just really fascinating. He says that that the otaku seem to be able to enjoy lolitas and female otaku enjoying the yaoi genre, featuring male homosexuals. And on the other hand, everyone knows that among otaku there are not so many real pedophiles or homosexuals. Same thing on 4chan, I guess, or I'd like to believe. So he kind of says that, what does he say here? These people just kind of train themselves to respond to this stimuli in the same way that a Pavlovian dog would, right? They train themselves to get erected or get aroused by cat ears or whatever, but that doesn't transfer into their sexuality, right? They themselves suffer from this kind of weird multiple personality disorder. That in their fantasy realm, they're willing to kind of do whatever, but it's completely split off from their life as it is. He says, in contrast, the feelings they experienced are entirely different motive and opportunity to understand the pedophilia and homosexuality or a fetish. And he says, in any case, the sexual awareness of the otaku doesn't seem to reach the level of this kind of pedophilia or whatever, the tentacle porn or whatever. It's just the otaku, he says, it's just kind of in a provocative mark, he says, otaku seem to have a Janus-like face, right? That in society, they're very conservative. But on the internet, they're like, I don't know, any crazy fantasy is A-okay. And this split doesn't seem to reach over to the real world. I don't know, in the same way that I think, to be honest, I think that's the way 4chan works too. Like, people on 4chan just regard that as a space of the perverse fantasies. But does that really transfer over to their life? Somehow I doubt it. For all the tough talk that 4chan gives, I think they're more like robots than they think. And, you know, when it comes to living their real life, they're just as normal as everyone else for the most part. Except for the serial killers that go there. And so, I mean, like, there's this kind of split that occurs within their fantasy realm that doesn't transfer over completely, or at least in any significant way, any statistically significant way, to their real life. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a lie? Do you think that that's covering up the truth? What do you guys think of that kind of very provocative statement that they kind of split themselves in the way that they see this work? The same way that the works themselves are split up. Their own sense of self is split. What do you guys think of that?
I mean, I agree on the point that, like, I don't think this transfers over. I think it might even be a mistake to always assume that what you fantasize about are your own frustrated desires. Like literal desires. I mean, it's quite possible that the fantasy is actually representative of not something you'd like to literally do, but some other type of, you know, maybe something about power relations or something about, you know, wanting to dominate or submit, things like this that, like, I mean, watching tentacle porn doesn't mean you literally want to become an octopus.
Or be raped by
raped by an octopus. You know what I mean? Like, the same thing would go with, like, your quote unquote rape fantasies too. It doesn't literally mean that either. You can fantasize about things without having that literal desire. And I don't think they transfer over directly either.
At least not in any easy way.
Yeah, nothing as simple as that. Like, oh yeah, you watched that, you love that movie. What's a good one? Where I don't even know. The one with the hospital with all the scatological. Well, I don't even know. I can't even remember the title anymore. But
well, I know, but I'm not going to say because I don't know what you're talking about.
So that's what you want to do. You want to sneak into the hospital and rape nurses, I guess.
How did you found me out, sir? You got me. What do you think, Jesse? Does it? I mean, like, just think about how this relates to your life too. Do you think it transfers over? Do you think it's a lie? Not accusing you of being a rapist or something.
Well,
with your long history of raping, Jesse.
What do you think about this statement?
Well, you give me a second. I need to. I think the little girl I've locked in my closet. I need to give her some food, so I'm just going to feed her and be right back.
Okay, we'll give you a couple minutes then.
Don't worry, it won't take that long. But no, definitely. I mean, I was going to bring up. Justin already beat me to, but I'm sorry, Taniguchi Senpai already beat me to it. But
that's right.
but, you know, rape porn, rape fantasy. is I think, at least judging by the quantity of rape porn and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, I think there's a significant portion of the population that has this as a fantasy, but the rape numbers simply do not reflect this.
Yeah.
Yes. So obviously, I think whether or not there's it's a there's a frustrated connection that me it's not me not a direct connection. Me it's symbolic of a different frustrated desire. There might be that connection, or it'd be even just like this what do you call it, the Niju Jinkak.
Yeah.
There is a complete dissociation between he said your desires and your sexuality. What was the terms I think you those mean this is completely disconnected.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I think it would be interesting to say something like this, or at least I think he's suggesting something like this, is that, like he's saying, look, it's not as if otaku can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. It's actually the opposite. Otaku can tell the difference between fantasy and reality, and they've chosen fantasy. That's what they've chosen. That's why they see things in kind of, what is it, manga realism and stuff like that. They know the difference, and they've chosen the fantasy route. That's why this doesn't seem to. That's how they can make the split.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, like, I don't know how good of a relevant of a point this is, but, like, especially things like sexual fantasies and stuff. I mean, I guess the thing is, like, it belies. I mean, the fact that you can be wrong about what your sexual fantasies are belie this point, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like you can think you think something's really sexy until you try it, and then you're kind of like, oh, it really didn't do a heck of a lot for me.
Is this the story you have ready for us now?
I knew you were gonna do that. I knew you were gonna take it there. I'm just gonna leave that right there. I'm not gonna continue on with any more story.
Okay. So I don't know, it's very interesting, suggestive. What with all the current debate about how media influences your actions, this is just another kind of way to take a look at it and start to interpret. I don't know how otaku or gamers or whatever you want to say would react to seeing this kind of stuff in their games. So maybe like games like the infamous games in Japan, like that rape play game, are not as dangerous as some would lead you to believe, right? Media just doesn't have that simple effect on you. Not to say it has no effect, but it doesn't have a simple effect on you. There's no kind of one-to-one correlation at all that's happening here, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, what was that thesis? What do they call it? Like the injection thesis or something? Yeah. Like you injected with the message and you just kind of produce it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think that the data bears me out, or at least if you look for online searches of stuff. I mean, people enjoy freaky things, man. So, rape fantasies are quite common, and MILF fantasies are very common. If you just look at the data, I mean, you can see a teenager fantasy, and like they're all there. And somehow the world's gotten by. So, anyway, it's just fascinating little part of the book. There's nothing else to it other than that that's kind of suggesting that they're kind of... I just like this idea that not only does media get split up, the self does too, right? It starts to be split and split and split, and to the point where I think ultimately, like, you can start adapting selves the same way you start adapting kind of narratives.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting how that would work into like gamer culture? Like, oh, I don't have one life, I have many lives. I'm a gamer.
That post, that graphic, I mean.
Yeah. This idea that you can start either multiple yous that are in there, ready to get out. You're the fighter and the swordsmith and the adventurer and the cute little girl on YouTube. There's just multiple yous out there, and there's no one you that's inside. There's these multiple power structures and patterns inside that you can just choose and flip between. Sounds like some kind of postmodern fantasy or something.
I mean, it fits in with the book. I mean, like, then you yourself, I mean, he kind of suggests this, too, that eventually you yourself or characters themselves become just Simulacra 2, and the real stuff is just like the database of elements that you could also have been different too.
Yeah.
You could have been that adventure also.
Yeah.
If this Simulacra had not been as it is.
Yeah. It's kind of where I was going with that. Anything else?
Oh boy, there are, yeah, like you said, there's a lot in this book, and I did make lots of pages of notes, but no, okay, I think I'm pretty good. I think we got to the core. We got the core of it.
Okay, but there is more to say, and it's a very fascinating topic. I highly suggest you read it. Jesse, anything you want to say? Anything that struck you as neat or interesting, or you want to talk more about fantasies, or no?
Well, of course, I want to talk about rape fantasy. Let's just
okay.
why don't we just devote another couple hours of our video to talking rape fantasies.
Okay.
You want to go into details? I'd love to hear. Marichan, I would love to hear your rape fantasies.
Well, obviously, I'm a little girl, so I don't have this. No. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm just here eating my Japanese toast-flavored potato chips. I have no fantasies.
The dream has died.
The dream is dead, right? I'm eating toast-flavored potato chips. I'm obviously more decadent than anyone here. Descended that low. And anything particular you want to get at, or are you good?
Well, no, let's not get into the Hegelian stuff. That would just put us onto another 3-hour spiral. Well,
anything's fine though. I'm up for talking about anything unless you would say if you're fine, that's fine.
No.
Okay.
I am A-okay.
A-okay. All right. So there you go.
I guess. It's just me throwing one.
I was gonna say everything's a remix. So.
Everything's a remix. Everything is remix. I was gonna say, it just reminded me. Just one last little thing it reminded me of was like Jesse. You brought up Fleming. I just remembered Fleming. Fleming, he's a guy who's really against communication theory in art, like the idea that art is communication. And he's got this kind of it's the idea cooked up that art isn't communication because art doesn't work at all like communication. When you communicate with somebody, there are certain social rules governing how you respond to that communication. So when you say hello, you're supposed to say hello back or how are you, right? But he said the thing is art takes care of both sides of the communication for you, right? There's a conversation already in place, right? You don't need to, you're not required to make any sort of social communication toward it. It's actually, he suggests this kind of opens up this space for you to interact with it in different ways outside of what the social standards are. I just thought that was actually kind of fitting back into Fleming. I thought that worked really neat, and it makes you think about because I think it's difficult to leave this idea that art is communication, this theory, to leave it behind. I don't I'm not going to go out and proclaim it as strongly as he does, but it's just something to think about along the way.
Yeah. I will just throw out that, I just kind of as a rephrase, I'm sure his whole theory. When he talks about the grand narratives in the background, of course, he's talking about he uses it in two senses. Says one being the grand narrative of Gundam, the fall of Zia, and the other there's also the grand narratives they're previously tied to a grand narrative in human history in a Hegelian sense, right? Right.
Yeah, right. They're kind of mirrored into each other, right? The way that you would live in the world would be the way that you would experience the Gundam world, right?
Yeah, and then once it just kind of seems once those grand narratives, and he calls, at one point he calls Chinese communism the societal void. It's this last kind of lurking grand narrative that has yet to die. And then it kind of makes sense when you think that once all of our grand narratives are dead, what else do we have left to look at? There is only the people.
Yeah, that's right. they would fall squarely on the people. Like, I guess when you have a grand narrative, the people are kind of just pawns in a big story, right? What's important is the story. The people, they're just tools to get to the end of the story. But if you look at otaku works, some of them anyway, these slice of life works especially, it's about the people, right? The point isn't to get to the end of the story sometimes, it's about to enjoy the characters themselves. So, yes.
By the way, is Odysseus, yes, the Odyssey, is that a postmodern work?
Pre-modern.
Well, I mean, as far as structure, it has a very unique convention to it, but it honestly seems like if we take it out of its place in history, it falls more into the postmodern style of work.
I've heard people suggest that some of these like works actually are closer. Is it like? Yeah.
I mean, it's just interesting to consider that the Greeks were also polytheists.
Yeah, right. Remember, like there was all kinds of like Athenas, right? There were many different types of Athena, like Batman. You know, it wasn't just one Athena, right? There were many different stories depending on which stories of Athena you thought were the more interesting ones. You kind of shape your Athena image around that. So they were onto something. They could have made Batman back in the Greek days, maybe.
Yeah, maybe when you have a polytheism, it's much easier to accept that there are kind of multiple competing ways to look at the world, as opposed to a monotheism where it seems to kind of crash into only one possible way, either a saint or a sinner. But when you have kind of polytheism, maybe it's easier to kind of see these multiple power structures. In the same way that Japan to this day is, I guess, polytheist.
I guess.
I'm not quite sure anymore. I don't know what they really are anymore, but maybe that's a story for another time. But Japan has a history of polytheism. The Greeks do too. So maybe in that sense, maybe that's another interesting way to look at it. What you said. Within that culture, maybe works like that were more possible or something like that. But I suppose it's also possible to make any work a postmodern work if you just reread it in a certain way. Anything else?
Like and subscribe?
Like and subscribe.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. And if you have any interesting data, write it in the comments. I like data. So you can just write random data to like the length of my hair or something right on the screen. You can write that too. Or the number of times Cube wagged his tail in this video. You can write that too.
You have to, of course, adjust for it, because sometimes there's been like, freezing and skipping. You have to kind of adjust for that new data, of course.
Of course, right. Well, there's multiple interpretations possible. We have to read up and see. So, yeah, please like, subscribe, watch. Please read the book, though.
Yes.
Of anything. I just one thing. He's an interesting guy, and he needs more attention. He deserves much more attention than he's getting. Look at that book up in the corner. You can see it. But it's in English, too. You can get it in English, and it's called Otaku, Japan's Database Animals by Hiroki Azuma. It's been translated into English. It's not only in Japanese. Please give this guy a chance. He's not bad at all. I quite like him. And he's got other works ready to read, too. If you're not interested in just kind of media theory and anime and otaku and things like that, you can definitely read something else by him. Highly recommend.
Me too.
Yes.
Provocative at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, at least it gets you thinking about some of this stuff, and that's good enough. The only thing I got of it was text, though. Just letters. I counted the number of A's.
Oh, okay. That was your interpretation of the work?
You tell me that's the wrong way to read the work?
No, it's not the wrong way. That's an extremely shallow way, but...
Well, of course, I was just moiling over for all of his references to Stalin.
Of course. Yeah, I was just enjoying the texture of the pages. So.
Those are some good pages.
Yeah, some very nice feeling pages.
Legitimate.
It's another legitimate reading, although not a reading I would recommend, because that gets you nowhere. But if that's what you want, okay, that's what you want to go nowhere. Be my guest.
So basically, to summarize, the TPS recommendation for Hiroki Azuma's Dobutsu postmodern and Otaku, the Japan's basic animal, is that yes, you should read it because it has very good feeling pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds like something you'd hear in Japan, actually. I love the feel of paper. Yes, you do hear that. Anyway, if my character could roll its eyes again, it would be. Anyway, all right. So, thanks a lot, and for anyone that made it this far, I doubt it. For the one person that did, yeah, congratulations, and definitely check it out because he's not that famous yet. Make him famous.
One person.
Yeah, one person. Make Japanese philosophy great again. We're counting on you. All right.
10.
Until we meet again, maybe not in cute girl form, or maybe you want us to stay in cute girl form. Maybe leave that in the comment too.
Wow, what's happening to this channel?
It's getting better.
Yes,
All
make
right.
TPS great again.
All right. So until next time, I guess catch you later. I wish I could wave, but it's going to be tough here. Oh boy, I don't have my hands up. Okay, just assume that I'm waving. All right, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. I put my hand.